We are live.
Fabulous.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Welcome to today's conversation. I'm Nicole Smith from the Artisans Business Solutions, and I'm joined with David Simpson from Melbourne HR and Liam Benson from Evolve Cyber.
The three of us have come together because we see firsthand how businesses struggle with the productivity, team alignment, and secure operations. We're here to have real conversations about what's working, what's not, and how leaders can navigate these challenges.
Each session will bring different perspectives from operations, people, and technology, so you get a well-rounded view of how to build a stronger, more efficient business.
And today we are going to dive straight on into building a resilient and proactive team. So this is one of those topics that I know floats around as the business is growing. We start with everyone gung-ho, go, 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 and then we just kind of move through, and sometimes things fall through the crack. So let's jump on in. As always, as you're listening, if there's something that's on the tip of your tongue you want to ask us, pop it in the chat. We would love to engage with you as part of this conversation. Well, where do we start? David, I feel like this is completely in your wheelhouse.
Of course. Well, look, I mean, I think let's talk about that concept of reactivity and proactive culture. I think that's kind of a good starting point. I do think we've got to remember that in a lot of businesses, they're actually set up and structured in a reactive way. So it's not just about, employees should be more proactive. In many cases, employees are responding to the fact that their work environment is a reactive work environment. Be it just a simple example of, you have clients asking questions, a customer service situation. You're constantly getting those questions in. That is ultimately a reactive role. So reactivity is responding to stimuli, and proactive is actually going out there and establishing something where there wasn't something before, right? And the reality is most businesses are set up in a reactive fashion, and proactivity is amazing. But two things, that's not how a lot of businesses are set up. And also proactivity is a lot harder for both managers and for employees than being reactive is.
And it is that conversation between being reactive and being responsive as well. There's the thought pattern about a reaction is, got to do, action, done. The emails come through, got to respond. And as I guess a leader and a business, if we're looking to create a culture that supports this proactive response versus reactive, we do come back and have a look at, well, what are our standards? What are our SLAs in tech land? Service level agreements for responses. How do we communicate with our clients? I know that's a big conversation that I have with many businesses. Is email the method of communication? Are we using a third-party tool like WhatsApp or Teams, for example? Or is it mobile phone? So whatever those things might be, being really clear of what they are, and then all of that can flow through, right, to setting what it is for your business.
Absolutely. And I think I remember, for those who don't know, I'm ex-Navy. I was in the Navy for almost 10 years. And one of the things that I remember being taught when I was a young officer was that when I was on the bridge of the ship and I'm running the ship, the operations and navigating and making sure that everyone's safe and that we delivered on what we were supposed to do that day, always problems would come up, right? So there's that constant concept of responding to what's happening to you and also ensuring that things have been done. And there was this idea of like you had a fire extinguisher with one hand, and then you had, that day's activities or operations in the other. And at the end of your watch, you sat there and you had to take a step back and ask yourself, like, how did I go today? Like, how much was I putting fires out? And how much was I delivering on what needs to be delivered? And pushing the ship forward, literally and metaphorically, and so I think it's that's really important. That step back is going to be a key component of business leaders, because it should be thinking about yourself as well as your team. I think a lot of managers, they go, well, why didn't you proactively do that? Well, the other question is, as a leader, why didn't you proactively ensure that didn't happen in the first place, or take steps?
There's a couple of things that are just jumping out of my mind right now. I love that check-in, right? Something that is being put in front of me of recent times is that debrief process. So in every element that happens, so it's what's your day, what if there's a specific situation, going through, the 4 steps. Don't ask me what they are yet. I'm still getting all over them, but I'm sure that's something you did in the Navy quite frequently, is actually look at what was happening, why did it happen, what can we do better next time, and what's that, that step forward.
Lessons learned is it's called lessons learned, and that's like what you do at the end of any operation. An operation doesn't have to be some grandiose thing. An operation can be something small, more discreet, maybe 2-3 hours of a day. And so lessons learned was always a key element of that, so that everybody understood from a collective and individual basis what worked, what didn't work, and what are we going to do next time instead? Like, how are we going to make it better? Is a huge, and it's something that I think a lot of companies don't do. We're always in the rush to deliver the product, to bill out, and to ensure profitability and ensure that we're maximizing. But sometimes maximization can be viewed short and long. And short maximization is maximizing what you have today and maximizing dollars. Long is about asking yourself, can you do it better over the long term? Can you make it better? And I think that's the key.
Something else you mentioned there, David, was around that ownership point. I've watched recently a couple of masterclasses with Jocko Willink, and he talks about that extreme ownership of, what is my role in it, but then so the extended team, every one of us have our own role to play in the bigger picture, and looking inward around when a situation happens or the way that we're operating. Well, what is it that I could have done differently, better, versus going, it's Bob's problem over there. Do you see a lot of that in this sort of topic?
Absolutely. I mean, you particularly in employees that aren't engaged, they'll sit there and go, okay, well, these are the tools that I've used every day for the last 10 days, and I will use the best tool even if it doesn't work. And then I'll just put my hand in my heart and say, well, I did what I normally do. And what you really want is to get people to sort of really, query things and push things and go, how do I solve that? Because the ownership, we talk about ownership. We ask ourselves, what is it, and what do we get out of it? And ownership is saying that this is mine to achieve, right? I'm going to achieve the following. Not I'm going to do a task. That's not ownership. Ownership is I'm going to deliver the outcome, because the outcome may only require you to do the steps you normally do, but sometimes that outcome may require you to do a lot more, maybe invent steps. And that's how an ownership will be that driving factor. So it's not an outcome unto itself. It's about getting people to take ownership so that they drive an outcome to its completion, and owning both their role and that outcome. And you just, unfortunately, you don't see that from all your employees. And some of that's going to be a culture perspective. Some of that, unfortunately, will be an individual perspective as well. Some employees come in, they clock in, and they come to work and they go home. And in some environments, like a factory environment, that's not so bad because their work is very tightly controlled. But outside of those discrete environments, ownership is really key, because the less your staff own something, the more it's pushed up to management. And so you'll see that load get taken up. higher and higher, and then the more load they have, higher and higher, the less capacity they have to be proactive about the company and doing other things. So it's all interrelated, and the reality is that people just doing their job, that has a ramification, a ripple effect through the company, and ownership is a tool in which to solve that problem.
And being really clear on what are the individual roles and responsibilities for your particular position in the business. Something you touched on there was the difference between someone who sort of comes and lives and breathes their role versus just comes in, clocks off and goes home. I think there is an element of, in all businesses, we have talent who are those people that see the bigger picture, that are moving the business forward to where that big objective is. And then we've got our team, who are the people that come in and they're hard workers and they do the exact job that they're doing. They're committed to the culture and the vision and the mission still, but there is a very different, outcome that they're looking to achieve for that role in the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And creating, meshing those together, and also working and ensuring those who are potentially not willing to change for whatever reason, and working out whether they're still important, still not important. We're all important, but that we're still that they're still right for that role is really key. When I talk about culture, one of the things you talk a lot about, like, what can you do, what steps can you take, how do you how do you actually affect this? It seems so amorphous, and how do you turn it into concrete steps? Unfortunately, one of the concrete steps is also weeding and asking yourself the question: is that person really in the right role? And about giving people opportunity, but also understanding that not everyone's going to be able to take up that opportunity or be willing to take up that opportunity. So you need to work out whether somebody's right. They don't all have to be people trying to solve world hunger and driving for the company's absolute goals. There are different people for different reasons. Potentially the receptionist needs to be bubbly, potentially, but doesn't need to be this hard-hitting driver of company culture. And neither does the archivist in the basement. They don't really need. They need to be neither bubbly nor driving for the company. So it's about realizing you don't need superstars in every role or culture champions, they're called, in every role. But it is important to make sure the right people are in those right roles.
Sorry, my mind's just going back to, I used to work for Rothschild, the investment bank in London, and they have a very long living historical background to that particular family. And in the basement at King Street, whatever the street was called, was the archives. And it's a whole business in itself.
Yeah.
Meticulously detailed and put together. And you're so right. Someone that loves to be in the basement literally is going to be very different to a salesperson out on the floor making calls. And I think that's a really important part, is knowing who it is, the type of personality, skill set, outwards and inwards to match the team, right, for your business. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Liam, I would like to talk about tech stuff, because that's, I think, quite a big part around supporting our team to work better together and stronger and to help grow a business. What is it that you can see from working with your clients that have been that kind of switching point to supporting a business to be a bit more proactive in the way that they communicate, work, deliver, etc., that you've sort of supported them with?
Yeah, absolutely. I think going back to I was smiling before, going back to your comment about, how do we communicate in our team? Do we use WhatsApp? Do we use personal mobiles? And I was just laughing because, I've seen some very interesting team communication methods in my time. But I think, yeah. Anyway, moving on. So I think in terms of fostering a proactive culture, I think being forthcoming with information and process. And what I mean by that is, rather than half the company using WhatsApp to communicate and the other half using Facebook Messenger, as a leadership team, addressing that and saying, hey guys, we're going to look to use Microsoft Teams, Slack, Connect Teams, whatever the platform is. And this is our expectation around this platform. It's designed for instant communication. You don't need to use your mobile. Yes, you can access it on your mobile if that works for you, but this is where we want our communication to happen. And I find from a technical perspective, when a tool is evaluated, or let's say for example, say collaboration platform, when it's evaluated and tested and communicated properly, the uptake in the use of that platform is astronomical. And you notice that, for example, if you say move away from communicating via emails exclusively, sure, it takes a couple of minutes for emails to be sent and received, whereas instant message is instant, hence instant in the name, right? Over time, you'll notice that things happen quicker. You can get results quicker. Hey, Nicole, I just received a message from so-and-so. Can you give me a call back? It pops up on your screen. Yep, no worries, on the phone, bang. Whereas you send an email and then you wait, and then that person might not see the email, this, that, and the other. Plus, also, emails are just, look, emails are still modern technology, but, they're slow and things happen. And I don't know about you guys, but I get absolutely hammered by just junk in my inbox as well. So, from a culture perspective, just outlaying the expectations up front. And if you don't mind, so I might just take a minute as well. I hope this doesn't railroad the conversation, but I think also one thing about creating reactive versus proactive culture is, from a leadership team perspective, being the one to not only, hey team, we're going to do this, but also being the one to actually do it, because the people beneath you watch what you do. Now, I'll be the first to admit this. I've worked in several different organizations in my time, all with varying degrees of proactive, reactive. Was the culture good? Not so much. And the one key takeaway that I took from all of those businesses that I worked in was the fact that the leadership team would say one thing, but their behavior and intent would be another. And for me, as an employee, that's really hard to follow that. And something that I'm trying to do in my business. Now, look, we're not all perfect. We make mistakes, absolutely. But each day I try and do the things that I say that I'm going to do. And sometimes I fail. But I think ultimately that's one big key that I've also noticed in terms of culture, based on my own experience, but also just general observation. So hopefully that doesn't railroad the conversation.
No. I think it's great. We sort of talk about culture champions, right? And that, that's because we love buzzwords in business, right? And so culture champions become this great buzzword. But what a culture champion really is an exemplar, right? And that is super important, because without being an exemplar, your authority as a leader is eroded, which is what you're kind of talking about, Liam. And that's something that I really did learn firsthand in the military, is that you really need people looking at you all the time. The expectation as an officer, the expectation of your leadership is sky high. And so, being an exemplar, which is essentially what we would call a culture champion with buzzwords these days, is so important, because if you don't walk the walk, as you say, that the trust is eroded, your authority as a leader is eroded, but also, not only do people feel no need to participate in the culture in the way that you want. To be clear, culture is always created. Right. The question is whether you direct it or just let it do whatever it wants to do. And what's really important in that situation is that you also erode the organization's future authority. Because if in the future you want to take an initiative or you want to commence a program, then there's always in the back of the mind that, okay, well, what's going to happen this time? We're going to do this for 2 weeks and walk away from it. We're going to talk about it and not do it. And so when you're not an exemplar, when you don't follow through with what you say, the corrosion of that lack of action is actually multifaceted. And that's really important for leaders to understand. There's a whole, when I talk to some of my clients, sometimes a whole discussion about, well, what's the driver for this? Are we really going to pursue this to its end? Because if we're not, then the downside is worse than, the upside of a half-done job. And so, that discussion happens. I've had that discussion with many clients, and most of the time it's like, no, okay, well, let's nail this, let's push it, which is good. That's the right answer, or the better answer. It's not the right answer, it's the better answer. But the honest answer, less good, but an honest answer is sometimes, actually, you're right, we're not going to follow through. Let's walk away from this today, and let's pick it up another time. And so, I don't think it's a railroad at all, Liam. I think you're bang on. And just on the topic of tech, I think one of the things I've really seen change, and it was definitely COVID that kind of broke the back of this from my perspective, is whilst I used video calls a lot before COVID just blew that up, and that's one of the things, unlike working from home, that's one of the things that has and that's still a huge part of my business, both externally and internally.
And I think, as challenging as that time was, especially for us here in Melbourne, there has been some really amazing mindset shifts into what can be possible with business of all sizes, and introducing that flexibility and accessibility, async working. But with all of those changes comes new processes and standards and systemization that we need to teach it and train our team so that it becomes that business as usual. The thread that I'm really sort of pulling through all of this is the standards you walk past are the standards that you sort of set and you accept. So I was listening to a podcast recently, and I think it was Alex Hormozi was talking. It was the Diary of a CEO. He was talking about he had a meeting, and one of his team members was 3 minutes late to the meeting, and now their standard culture was that you are on time or early for that meeting to commence. Now, when that person came in, he messaged him, "Can you explain why you were late?" And the guy said, "Hey, I was late because I was on a sales call. I was tying that up." Now, their number one sort of mission was, follow through with the sales. So that was okay. It was communicated with the team. Everybody understood why he was late and that it was an acceptable reason. And then they moved on forward. So it just reiterated that we hold our time as a priority and everybody else's time and space. And that's the standard that we've agreed for the business. So I think that theme of standardization, as in what are those strong standards that we uphold ourselves to meet and hold for the business, that flows through to culture, through to proactivity, through to all of those elements that we've spoken about today.
Absolutely.
Huge. Massively important. And I think, and if you don't hold things to a standard, you get that corrosion. We should call this corrosion. Corrosion, certainly from my end, I feel like what I've talked about is corrosion. But it can be corrosive, because a standard slipped today is another standard slipped tomorrow. And it is really important. And we all need to be held to account. It's not just about, sitting there and saying, oh, well, bad employees need to be, held to account. That's not at all. We all need to be held to account. We all have bad days. We all need a little push sometimes. And so, it's important that we hold each other to account.
Absolutely.
And keeping that theme in mind, I'm going to hold us all to account. And we're going to wrap up today's beautiful conversation. But one of the takeaways for everyone listening here today is really start this journey by setting those clear expectations of your teams and their roles in the business. Really allow that space for decision making, and again, reinforce that accountability, those standards, hold them strong. As you as a leader, you are there to lead your business and really hold those standards strong so that everyone else can follow through from there.
Amazing.
Perfect.
Well, just a little reminder as well, we have our Lunch and Learn coming up in a couple of weeks, Wednesday, the 26th of March. Liam has just popped all the details there below. We have a beautiful space in the boardroom at Federation Square in Melbourne, CBD. So come along and join us. Check out all the information below, but we look forward to seeing you there.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
It'll be great. It'll be a lot of fun.
No, I think it'll be a great little lunchtime. So come along. Love to see you.
Amazing. All right, great. Well, I think we will also. No, we won't be actually. We will not be live next week, will we, Nicole? Because we are here, there, and everywhere.
So we're having a break next week, and we will be back the following week for another beautiful topic. I feel like it's all about cybersecurity and data safety, Liam. So this will be where you'll be sharing all your joy and your love. But thank you so much for joining us today, David and Liam. As always, it has been a pleasure. There's a lot of buzzwords I'm picking out. I'm going to throw those up on the wall as a priority reminder from today. Thank you.
Corrosion again. Better be one of them.
Corrosion is one of them. Absolutely. The most positive part.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. We will see you in a couple of weeks' time. If you're watching the replay, add those comments in there, and we'll definitely come back with a response for you. Look forward to connecting.
Sounds great. See you, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah.